You're hatching from an egg tucked deep inside a rolled leaf. The shell cracks around you as you push your way out, your legs working instinctively to break free. The world outside is dark and cramped, just a green tunnel that your mother created by rolling this leaf into a tight cylinder. She's long gone by now. She laid you here weeks ago, sealed you inside this leafy nursery, and disappeared. You'll never see her, and she'll never know if you survive what's coming next. The leaf around you isn't just shelter, it's everything. It's your home, your protection, and most importantly, your food. You don't waste time figuring out what to do. Your mandibles start working immediately, chewing through the soft green walls that surround you. The taste is bitter and tough, but it's all you have. You eat constantly, growing bigger with every bite. The tunnel you're trapped in becomes your entire universe for now. But you're not eating randomly. Something inside you knows exactly what to do. You chew in specific patterns, creating chambers and pathways through the rolled leaf. Each bite makes you stronger, but it also makes your shelter weaker. It's a race against time. You need to grow big enough to survive outside before the leaf falls apart completely. Days pass, and you can feel your body changing. Your legs get longer, your mandibles sharper. The leaf around you is looking more like Swiss cheese now, full of holes and weak spots. Sometimes pieces break away entirely, letting in light from the outside world. You're not ready for that yet, so you keep eating, keep growing, keep hoping the structure holds together just a little longer. Then one day, it doesn't. A gust of wind hits the tree, and your leafy home tears open completely. Suddenly you're exposed, a tiny, soft-bodied larva sitting on what's left of a shredded leaf. The outside world is massive, bright, and full of things that want to eat you. Birds scan the branches above, ants march along the bark below, and spiders wait in their webs nearby. Everything out here is built to hunt creatures exactly like you. You don't panic, though you probably should. Instead, you do the only thing you can. You keep eating. The remains of your original leaf won't last much longer, so you crawl toward the nearest fresh leaf. It's risky moving in the open like this, but staying put means starving. You drag yourself across the branch, moving as fast as your soft body allows. Every second feels like an eternity. A shadow passes overhead. You freeze instantly, pressing yourself flat against the bark. A bird lands on a branch nearby, its head turning back and forth as it searches for movement. You stay perfectly still, hardly breathing. After what feels like forever, it flies away. You wait a few more seconds, then continue your desperate crawl toward food. When you finally reach the fresh leaf, you don't hesitate. You start chewing immediately, creating a new shelter as you eat. This time, you're smarter about it. You stay near the edges where you can drop to safety if something threatens you. The leaf tastes better than your old home, fresher, less damaged. You eat with purpose now, knowing that every bite brings you closer to your next stage of development. But survival isn't just about eating. It's about avoiding everything else that lives in this tree. Ants are everywhere, marching in organized lines, always searching for easy prey. When a group gets too close, you curl up into a tight ball and play dead. Sometimes it works. They walk right past you. Other times, they investigate anyway, poking you with their antennae. You stay motionless, hoping they'll lose interest. Usually they do, but not always. One day, an ant doesn't give up. It grabs your leg with its mandibles and starts dragging you toward its nest. You can't play dead anymore. This is life or death. You uncurl and bite down on the ant's head as hard as you can. Your mandibles aren't meant for fighting, but desperation makes you stronger. The ant releases your leg and backs away, shaking its head. You don't stick around to see what it does next. You drop from the leaf and land on a lower branch, shaken but alive. As weeks pass, you notice your body getting tighter and tighter. The pressure builds until it becomes unbearable. Then something splits along your back. Your skin tears open, and you push your way out of your old shell. This is molting, and it's exhausting. Your new body is soft and vulnerable at first, but within hours it hardens into something stronger. You're bigger now, with better mandibles and longer legs, but you're also hungrier than ever. The molting process happens several more times as you grow. Each time, you emerge larger and more capable. Your mandibles develop into proper chewing tools. Your legs become strong enough to grip bark and leaves securely. Most importantly, your instincts sharpen. You get better at sensing danger, finding food, and staying alive. But being bigger also means being more visible. The camouflage that worked when you were tiny doesn't help as much now. Birds can spot you more easily, and bigger predators take notice. You learn to move differently, slower, more deliberately, always checking your surroundings before committing to any action. One afternoon, while you're feeding on a particularly thick leaf, something massive lands on the branch beside you. It's another giraffe weevil larva, but much larger than you. In the insect world, size usually means age, and age means experience. This one has survived longer than you, which makes it dangerous. It doesn't attack immediately. Instead, it starts feeding on the same leaf, getting closer to your feeding spot with each bite. You could move to another leaf, but this one is perfect, thick, nutritious, and in a safe location. Moving means risking exposure and potentially finding lower quality food, so you stay, hoping there's room for both of you. There isn't. The larger larva suddenly turns toward you, mandibles open wide. You barely have time to react before it lunges. You roll backward, falling off the leaf entirely. As you tumble through the air, you grab onto a smaller branch below. The impact hurts, but you're alive. Above you, the larger larva goes back to eating your leaf as if nothing happened. This is a lesson you won't forget. In the world of giraffe weevils, sharing isn't an option. Every leaf, every safe spot, every resource must be fought for. You're on your own out here, and the sooner you accept that, the better your chances of survival. Your final molt as a larva is different from the others. This time, when your skin splits open, what emerges isn't just a bigger version of what you were before. Your body has completely transformed. You now have the distinctive long neck that gives your species its name, though it's still developing. Your legs are longer and more precise. Most importantly, you have proper wings folded against your back, but you're not ready to use those wings yet. They're still soft and need time to harden. For now, you're stuck walking everywhere, which is actually more dangerous than flying. Ground-dwelling predators like spiders and beetles are everywhere, and your bright coloration makes you easy to spot against the dark soil. You climb back into the safety of the trees as quickly as possible. Up here, among the leaves and branches, you feel more at home. Your long neck, which seemed awkward at first, proves incredibly useful for reaching leaves that other insects can't access. You can stretch around branches, under obstacles, and into tight spaces that would be impossible for shorter-necked competitors. Your mandibles have also developed into something special. They're not just for chewing anymore, they're precision tools. You can manipulate leaves with surgical accuracy, creating perfect cuts and folds. This skill will become crucial later, but for now, it just makes feeding more efficient. The tree you live in becomes your entire world. You learn every branch, every safe hiding spot, every reliable source of food. You know which leaves are the most nutritious, which ones are too tough to bother with, and which ones might be hiding predators. This knowledge keeps you alive day after day. But knowledge alone isn't enough. One morning, you're feeding peacefully when the entire tree starts shaking. Something massive is climbing up from below, something much bigger than any insect. Through the leaves, you catch glimpses of brown fur and sharp claws. It's a monkey, probably looking for fruit or insects to eat. You freeze, hoping your stillness will keep you invisible. The monkey climbs past your branch, seemingly uninterested in your presence. But then it stops. Its head turns in your direction, dark eyes scanning the leaves where you're hiding. It has spotted you. The monkey reaches toward your branch with one long arm. You have seconds to react. Your wings aren't fully hardened yet, but they might be strong enough for a short glide. You spread them wide and leap from the branch, hoping for the best. For a terrifying moment, you're falling through empty air. Then your wings catch the breeze, and you glide awkwardly toward a distant tree. The landing is rough. You crash into a cluster of leaves and tumble down several branches before managing to grab hold of something solid. Your wings are bent and torn, but they'll heal. More importantly, you're alive and far from the monkey. As you catch your breath, you realize this was your first real flight, even if it was more of a controlled crash. Over the following days, your wings strengthen and your flying skills improve. You practice short hops between branches, gradually building confidence and coordination. Flying opens up entirely new possibilities. You can escape predators more easily, access food sources that were previously unreachable, and explore territory that would take hours to walk through. But flying also brings new dangers. Birds are much more of a threat when you're airborne. They're faster, more maneuverable, and built for aerial combat. You have to learn their hunting patterns, their favorite perches, and their typical flight paths. Most importantly, you learn to recognize their calls. Different species make different sounds, and some are more dangerous than others. Your neck continues to grow longer as you mature. What started as a modest extension becomes a remarkable appendage that's nearly as long as the rest of your body. It's not just for show. This neck is a tool that gives you access to resources other insects simply can't reach. You can probe deep into crevices, stretch around obstacles, and manipulate objects with incredible precision. The neck does have drawbacks, though. It makes you more conspicuous, harder to hide, and slightly less stable when walking or flying. You have to relearn basic movements as your proportions change. Simple actions, like climbing or turning, become more complex when you have to account for this long appendage. But the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages. You can feed on leaves that other insects ignore because they can't reach them. You can hide your body behind one branch, while your head explores completely different areas. Most importantly, you can assess situations from a distance before committing your entire body to potential danger. As you grow stronger and more confident, you begin to notice other giraffe weevils in the area. Most are like you, solitary creatures focused on survival and growth. But occasionally, you spot adults engaged in behaviors you don't understand yet. They seem to be communicating, competing, or cooperating in ways that make no sense to your juvenile mind. One day, you witness something that will stay with you forever. Two adult males are fighting on a high branch, their long necks intertwined as they wrestle for dominance. Their bodies twist and strain as each tries to throw the other from the branch. It's a battle of strength, endurance, and technique that goes on for nearly an hour. Eventually, one male gains the advantage. He manages to get his neck around his opponent's and uses leverage to flip him off the branch. The defeated male spreads his wings and flies away, while the victor claims his prize, access to a female who was watching the entire contest from a nearby leaf. You don't understand the significance of what you just witnessed, but something deep in your developing mind takes note. This is your future, the battles you'll fight, the competitions you'll face, the struggles that will define your adult life. For now, though, you're still growing, still learning, still focused on the simple but crucial task of staying alive long enough to reach maturity. Your body is changing again, but this time it's different. The transformations are more subtle, more focused. Your neck reaches its full adult length, stretching nearly twice the length of your body. Your mandibles harden into formidable tools, capable of precise cutting and powerful gripping. Most importantly, your reproductive organs begin to develop, though you don't understand their purpose yet. The urges start small, just vague restlessness that makes you want to explore beyond your familiar territory. You find yourself flying farther from your home tree, investigating areas you've never seen before. The landscapes change as you travel. Dense forests give way to clearings, steep hillsides drop into valleys, and new types of trees offer different challenges and opportunities. During one of these exploratory flights, you encounter something that stops you cold. Another giraffe weevil, but unlike any you've seen before, this one is massive, with a neck so long it seems impossible. Its mandibles are enormous, designed not just for feeding, but clearly for combat. This is a fully mature male, and everything about him radiates dominance and power. He notices you immediately. His head turns in your direction, and those powerful mandibles open slightly in what might be a warning. You don't stick around to find out. Your wings carry you away as fast as they can, but you can't shake the image of what you just saw. That's what you're becoming. That's what awaits you if you survive long enough. Your feeding habits change as your body matures. The simple leaf chewing of your youth evolves into something more sophisticated. You learn to select only the highest quality leaves, the ones with the perfect balance of nutrition and digestibility. Your elongated neck allows you to sample leaves from multiple trees without moving your body, creating an efficient feeding strategy that minimizes exposure to predators. But efficiency comes with a price. Your increased size and distinctive silhouette make you impossible to miss. Camouflage becomes less effective as you grow larger, forcing you to rely more on speed, agility, and intelligence to avoid threats. You develop new escape techniques, rapid directional changes mid-flight, sudden drops that confuse pursuing birds, and the ability to squeeze into hiding spots that seem too small for your frame. The seasonal changes affect you more now than they did as a larva. When the rains come, everything becomes more difficult. Your wings don't work well when wet, making flight dangerous or impossible. The leaves become slippery, causing you to lose your grip more often. Worst of all, the increased humidity brings out predators that normally stay hidden. Frogs that can snatch you from branches, spiders that build massive webs across flight paths, and beetles that emerge from bark crevices to hunt. During one particularly heavy rainstorm, you're forced to take shelter inside a hollow branch. The space is cramped and dark, barely large enough for your elongated body. As you wait for the weather to clear, you hear scratching sounds from deeper in the hollow. Something else is in here with you, and it's moving closer. Your neck gives you an advantage in this situation. You can extend your head toward the sound while keeping your body near the entrance, ready to escape if necessary. What you find surprises you. Another giraffe weevil, slightly smaller than you, huddled in the far end of the hollow. It's injured, with one wing torn and several legs missing segments. Under normal circumstances, This would be competition for resources. But something about the situation feels different. The injured weevil poses no threat, and the storm outside makes any kind of territorial dispute seem pointless. You both wait in silence as the rain pounds the tree around you, two creatures sharing space out of necessity rather than choice. When the storm finally passes, you emerge first. The injured weevil follows more slowly, struggling with its damaged appendages. You watch as it attempts to fly and fails, tumbling to a lower branch. Every instinct tells you to ignore it and move on, but something makes you pause. You'll never understand why, but you drop down to the same branch and spend the next hour feeding alongside the injured weevil, sharing access to the best leaves. It's the closest thing to cooperation you'll ever experience with another member of your species. By the next morning, the injured weevil has disappeared, whether it recovered enough to fly away or fell victim to a predator. You'll never know. But the memory of that brief, wordless companionship stays with you. Your final growth phase brings physical changes that are both exciting and terrifying. Your mandibles expand to their full adult size, becoming genuine weapons capable of crushing smaller insects or cutting through tough plant material. Your neck reaches its maximum length, giving you an almost snake-like ability to probe and explore your environment. Most dramatically, your coloration shifts to the bright warning patterns that mark you as a fully mature adult. The new colors serve multiple purposes. They warn potential predators that you're large enough to fight back effectively. They also signal to other giraffe weevils that you're no longer a juvenile. You're now competition for resources and potential mates. The bright patterns make you more visible, but they also make you more respected. With maturity comes new instincts that you don't fully understand yet. You find yourself drawn to certain types of trees, particularly those with the thick, waxy leaves that are perfect for egg laying. You don't know why these trees appeal to you. That knowledge is still locked away in genetic programming that won't activate for weeks or months. But the attraction is undeniable. You also become more aggressive toward other weevils. When you encounter another adult feeding on a prime leaf, you don't simply move on as you would have in the past. Instead, you approach deliberately, mandibles slightly open, neck extended to its full length. It's a challenge, though you're not entirely sure what you're challenging them for. Most encounters end without violence. The smaller weevil usually retreats, recognizing that you have the size advantage. But occasionally, you meet another adult who's equally unwilling to back down. These confrontations are tense affairs, two powerful insects facing off, each trying to determine if the other is worth fighting. Your first real fight comes sooner than expected. You're feeding on a particularly nutritious leaf when another male approaches. He's slightly larger than you, with mandibles that look like they've seen combat before. Instead of the usual posturing, he attacks immediately, lunging forward with his neck extended and mandibles wide. You barely react in time. Your own neck snaps back, avoiding his initial strike by inches. He recovers quickly and attacks again, this time trying to grab your neck with his mandibles. You twist away and counterattack, aiming for his head. The battle becomes a complex dance of strike and counterstrike, each of you using your elongated necks as both weapons and shields. The fight lasts much longer than you expected. Your opponent is experienced, able to anticipate your moves and counter them effectively. But you have youth and energy on your side. Gradually, you begin to gain the advantage. Your strikes become more accurate, your defenses more solid. Finally, you manage to get your mandibles around his neck, just behind his head. You don't crush down immediately. Instead, you hold him, letting him feel the pressure of your grip. It's a clear message. You could end this fight right now if you chose to. He struggles briefly, then goes still. After a few seconds, you release him. He backs away slowly, then spreads his wings and flies off to find another feeding spot. You've won your first territorial dispute, but the victory feels different than you expected. There's satisfaction, certainly, but also a strange emptiness. You got to keep the leaf, but at what cost? Your neck aches from the strain, and several of your legs are scraped and sore. More importantly, you've crossed a line. You're no longer just trying to survive. You're actively competing, fighting for resources and status in ways that will define the rest of your adult life. The leaf you fought for tastes the same as any other. But as you eat, you notice other weevils in the area giving you more space, treating you with a respect that wasn't there before. Word travels fast in the insect world, and your victory has established you as a force to be reckoned with. It's a reputation that will serve you well in the challenges ahead. Your newfound status brings both advantages and responsibilities. Smaller weevils defer to you more readily, giving you access to the best feeding spots without a fight. But larger, more experienced adults also take notice of you now. You're no longer beneath their attention. You're a potential threat that needs to be evaluated, and if necessary, dealt with. The territorial boundaries in your area become more defined as you and other adults establish your respective domains. It's not a formal system, but rather an understanding based on strength, experience, and willingness to fight. Your territory encompasses 3 large trees and several smaller ones, giving you access to a variety of food sources and potential nesting sites. Maintaining this territory requires constant vigilance. You patrol the boundaries regularly, marking them with your scent and chasing away intruders. Most challenges come from younger adults testing their limits, but occasionally an established male will probe your defenses, looking for signs of weakness or opportunity. One such challenge comes from an unexpected direction. An older male, one you've seen but never directly confronted, begins making incursions into your territory. He doesn't attack your prime feeding spots immediately. Instead, he tests your response by claiming marginal areas first. It's a calculated strategy, designed to gauge your strength and commitment without risking everything in a single confrontation. You respond with equal calculation. Rather than rushing into battle, you begin expanding your own patrols, making your presence felt throughout your territory. You mark boundaries more frequently and make sure to feed openly in disputed areas. It's a show of strength designed to discourage further encroachment without forcing an immediate conflict. The strategy works for a while. The older male's incursions become less frequent, and you begin to think the territorial dispute has resolved itself peacefully, but you've underestimated your opponent's patience and cunning. He's been watching you, learning your patrol patterns, and identifying your behavioral weaknesses. The attack comes when you least expect it. You're feeding peacefully on a leaf, deep within what you consider your secure territory, when he strikes from above. Whoa. He must have been waiting in the canopy for hours, timing his assault perfectly. His mandibles clamp down on your neck before you even realize you're under attack. But he's made a crucial error. In his eagerness to land a decisive blow, he's overextended himself, leaving his own neck vulnerable. You twist violently, breaking his grip, and immediately counterattack. Your mandibles find their target, clamping down on his neck just behind his head. This time, there's no gentle pressure, no warning squeeze. This is a fight for territory, for dominance, for the right to exist in this space. The older male is strong and experienced, but his attack has put him in a disadvantageous position. You use your grip to control his movements, preventing him from bringing his superior size to bear effectively. The battle becomes a test of endurance rather than raw power, and your youth gives you the edge you need. After what feels like hours but is probably only minutes, your opponent's struggles weaken. He's not giving up, he's running out of energy. You maintain your grip, applying just enough pressure to keep him immobilized without causing permanent damage. Finally, he goes limp, acknowledging defeat. You hold him for a few more seconds, making sure the surrender is genuine, then release your grip. He staggers backward, breathing heavily, his neck bearing the marks of your mandibles. Without a word, because insects don't speak, he spreads his wings and flies away. You won't see him in your territory again. The victory establishes you as a dominant male in your area, but it also marks the end of your juvenile phase. You're now a full adult, with all the responsibilities and challenges that entails. Your next instinct won't be about territory, or feeding, or survival. It will be about something entirely different, something that will drive you to take risks you've never considered before. The urge starts as a subtle restlessness, a feeling that there's something missing from your carefully ordered life. You have territory, abundant food, and the respect of other weevils in your area. But none of that seems to matter anymore. Something else is calling you, pulling you toward behaviors and destinations that you don't yet understand. The scent hits you like lightning, sweet, complex, utterly irresistible. It's unlike anything you've ever experienced, cutting through all the familiar smells of leaves, bark, and soil. Every fiber in your body responds instantly. Your antennae twitch frantically, trying to pinpoint the source. Your legs start moving before your brain catches up, carrying you toward whatever is producing this intoxicating aroma. You abandon your feeding spot without a second thought. The leaf you were carefully selecting becomes irrelevant. Your territorial boundaries, which you fought so hard to establish and defend, suddenly feel like meaningless lines in the dirt. Nothing matters except finding the source of that scent. Flying through the forest, you're not alone. Other males are in the air too, all heading in the same direction. Their movements are urgent, almost frantic. You recognize some of them, rivals you've faced before, weevils you've chased from your territory, but competition feels different now. This isn't about food or space anymore. This is about something far more fundamental. The scent grows stronger as you approach a massive tree at the edge of your known territory. Your neck extends instinctively, probing the air for the exact location. Then you see her, a female giraffe weevil, larger than you expected, with a neck that's proportionally shorter but no less impressive. She's positioned herself on a prominent branch, completely exposed, as if she wants to be found. But you're not the first to arrive. Two other males are already there, circling her like satellites around a planet. One is roughly your size, the other significantly larger. Neither pays attention to your approach. They're too focused on each other and on the female who's watching their every move with what seems like casual interest. The larger male makes the first move. He approaches the female directly, his neck extended in what might be a greeting or a threat. She doesn't retreat, but she doesn't welcome him either. Instead, she shifts her position slightly, angling herself so that her body blocks his advance. It's a subtle rejection, but unmistakable. The second male interprets this as his opportunity. He moves in from a different angle, mandibles open wide in an impressive display. But the female's response is the same, a slight adjustment that clearly signals disinterest. Both males back off, confused and frustrated. That's when you understand. She's not just waiting for any male. She's evaluating, choosing, making decisions based on criteria you can't fathom. The scent that drew you here isn't just an advertisement of availability. It's a test, a challenge, an invitation to prove yourself worthy. The larger male apparently reaches the same conclusion. Instead of continuing to court the female directly, he turns toward his competition. His neck extends to its full length as he sizes up the other male. The message is clear. Eliminate the competition first, then worry about impressing the female. What follows is the most intense battle you've ever witnessed. Both males are experienced fighters, their necks moving with deadly precision as they strike and counterstrike. Their mandibles clash with audible force, each trying to gain the grip that will end the fight. The female watches with apparent interest, as if she's evaluating their performance. You hang back, uncertain whether to join the battle or wait for its conclusion. Part of you wants to rush in while they're distracted, but something tells you that wouldn't impress the female. She seems to value strength and skill, not opportunism. The fight ends when the larger male manages to get his mandibles around his opponent's neck. But instead of applying crushing pressure, he simply holds the position until the smaller male goes limp in submission. It's a display of control rather than brutality, power restrained rather than unleashed. The defeated male spreads his wings and disappears into the forest, leaving you alone with the victor and the female. Now the larger male turns his attention back to the female, but his approach is different this time. He's proven his dominance through combat, and his posture reflects that confidence. He moves closer, mandibles relaxed, neck extended in what's clearly a courtship display rather than a threat. The female's response surprises you. Instead of accepting or rejecting him, she turns toward you. Her head tilts slightly, as if she's evaluating your presence for the first time. You freeze, uncertain what this attention means or how you should respond. The larger male notices her shift in focus and immediately sees you as a threat. He abandons his courtship display and charges directly at you, mandibles wide, intent on eliminating this new competition quickly and decisively. You barely have time to react. Your neck snaps back as his mandibles sweep through the space where your head had been. He recovers instantly and attacks again, this time trying to grab your body with his powerful jaws. You twist away, using your agility to avoid his superior strength. But you're not just running anymore. Something about the female's attention has awakened a fierce competitiveness in you. When the larger male overextends on his next attack, you counter with a strike of your own. Your mandibles catch him across the side of his neck, not hard enough to cause serious damage, but sufficient to throw him off balance. The battle that follows is unlike anything you've experienced. Your previous fights were about territory or food, practical matters with clear objectives. This is about something deeper, more primal. Every move you make is being watched and evaluated by the female. Winning isn't just about defeating your opponent. It's about proving yourself worthy of her choice. Your youth and agility give you advantages you didn't expect. The larger male is stronger, but he's also slower and more predictable. You use hit-and-run tactics, striking quickly and then retreating before he can counterattack. Gradually, you begin to wear him down. The turning point comes when he tries a desperate, all-or-nothing assault. He lunges forward with everything he has, mandibles wide, aiming to end the fight with a single decisive blow. But his desperation makes him sloppy. You sidestep his attack and immediately counter, your mandibles closing around his neck in the exact position he'd held his previous opponent. For a moment, You consider applying the same restraint he'd shown, holding him until he submits, then releasing him unharmed. But something in the female's posture suggests she expects more. This isn't just about defeating an opponent, it's about proving you have what it takes to protect potential offspring, to defend territory, to survive in a hostile world. You apply pressure, not enough to cause permanent damage, but sufficient to make your point clear. The larger male struggles briefly, then goes limp. You hold the position for several more seconds, making sure both he and the female understand the outcome. When you finally release him, he doesn't linger. He spreads his wings and flies away without looking back. Now you're alone with the female, and you have no idea what to do next. Your instincts are screaming at you to approach her, but your experience tells you to be cautious. She's been evaluating males all day, rejecting some, testing others. What makes you think you'll fare any better? The answer comes when she moves first. She approaches you slowly, her neck extended but her mandibles relaxed. It's not a threat, it's an invitation. You respond carefully, matching her pace and posture. When you're close enough to touch, she stops and waits. The courtship that follows is unlike anything in your previous experience. It's a complex dance of approach and retreat, of gentle touches and careful positioning. Your elongated necks intertwine briefly, then separate. You offer her food, a particularly choice leaf you've been saving, and she accepts it graciously. Throughout the process, you're acutely aware that she could reject you at any moment. Despite your victory in combat, you're still being evaluated. Every movement, every gesture, every response is being weighed against criteria you don't understand. But gradually, her posture relaxes. Her movements become more accepting, more welcoming. When you approach for the final time, she doesn't retreat or deflect. Instead, she positions herself to allow the mating that both of you have been building toward. The act itself is brief, but intense. Your bodies connect with a precision that seems impossible given your awkward proportions. For a few crucial moments, you're not separate creatures competing for resources. You're partners in the most fundamental biological imperative. Then it's over, and you separate once again. The female's behavior changes immediately after mating. The welcoming posture disappears, replaced by something more businesslike and distant. She begins grooming herself meticulously, paying particular attention to her reproductive organs. You watch, uncertain whether you should stay or leave. The decision is made for you when another male appears on the horizon. The female's scent is still strong in the air, still drawing competitors from across the forest. Your mating was successful, but it wasn't exclusive. She'll mate with multiple males before the day is over, ensuring genetic diversity in her offspring. The approaching male is enormous, bigger than either you or your previous opponent. His mandibles look like they could cut through small branches, and his neck seems impossibly long, even by Giraffe Weevil standards. Everything about him radiates experience and dominance. You could fight him. You've proven yourself capable in combat, and your recent victory has filled you with confidence. But something tells you this opponent is different. This isn't a battle you're likely to win, and losing could mean serious injury or death. More importantly, you've already achieved your primary objective. Your genes are now part of the female's reproductive future. Fighting this new male would be about ego, not survival or reproduction. Sometimes the smartest strategy is knowing when to retreat. You spread your wings and take to the air, leaving the female to evaluate her next suitor. As you fly away, you can hear the sounds of another courtship beginning below. It stings your pride slightly, but you console yourself with the knowledge that you were there first, that your contribution to the next generation is secure. The flight back to your territory feels different than the journey out. The urgent compulsion that drove you to seek out the female has faded, replaced by a strange sense of completion. You've fulfilled the most fundamental requirement of adult life. You've successfully reproduced. But the satisfaction doesn't last long. Within hours of returning to your familiar trees, you catch another scent on the wind. It's fainter than the first one, coming from a different direction, but unmistakably the same type of signal. Another female, somewhere in the forest, advertising her availability. The cycle begins again. You abandon your feeding and launch yourself into the air, following the scent trail toward another potential mate. This time, you know what to expect. The competition will be fierce, the battle's intense, the courtship complex. But you also know you have what it takes to succeed. Over the following weeks, you respond to dozens of these chemical signals. Some lead to successful matings, others to defeats that send you limping back to your territory. You win more often than you lose, but each victory comes at a cost. Scraped mandibles, torn wings, exhausted muscles. The constant fighting takes its toll on your body. Your once pristine exoskeleton becomes scarred and battered. Several of your legs bear the marks of close calls with opponents' mandibles. Your neck, while still functional, aches constantly from the strain of repeated battles, but you can't stop. The drive to reproduce overwhelms every other consideration, including your own physical well-being. Each time a female's scent reaches you, you respond immediately, regardless of your condition or the odds against you. One particularly brutal encounter leaves you with a cracked mandible and a wing that doesn't fold properly. Your opponent was younger and stronger, and he showed no mercy when he gained the advantage. You barely escaped with your life, tumbling from the battle tree, with your wing trailing uselessly behind you. The injured wing heals poorly, leaving you with a permanent limp in flight. You can still fly, but not with the grace and speed you once possessed. This handicap makes you more vulnerable to predators and less effective in combat. Your days as a dominant male are numbered. The realization hits you during a failed courtship attempt. A female you've been pursuing shows interest in your approach, but when another male arrives to challenge you, you lose the ensuing battle decisively. Your damaged wing throws off your balance, and your cracked mandible can't grip as securely as it once did. The younger male defeats you easily and claims the female as his prize. As you fly away from yet another defeat, you notice changes in your territory that you've been too distracted to address. Other weevils have been feeding on your prime trees, leaving behind the kind of damage that takes weeks to heal. Your scent markers have faded, and your boundaries have become meaningless. You try to reassert your dominance, but your heart isn't in it anymore. The younger weevils can sense your weakness, and they press their advantages aggressively. One by one, your best feeding spots are claimed by rivals who would never have dared challenge you in your prime. The decline accelerates as your body continues to deteriorate. The constant fighting has worn down your joints and damaged your internal organs. You find yourself tiring more easily, healing more slowly, reacting less quickly to threats. The forest that once seemed like your domain now feels hostile and alien. Your feeding becomes less efficient as your mandibles lose their cutting edge. Leaves that you once processed easily now require significant effort to chew. You begin losing weight, which makes you even more vulnerable to both predators and competitors. One morning, you wake to find that you can barely move your right wing. The old injury has worsened overnight, possibly due to an infection or simply accumulated wear. Flying becomes increasingly difficult, limiting your mobility and trapping you in whatever tree you happen to occupy. The isolation is perhaps the hardest part. For months, your life has been filled with competition, combat, and reproduction. Now you spend days alone, too weak to seek out mates, and too damaged to defend territory effectively. The silence feels oppressive after so much activity and conflict. You still respond to the occasional scent of a receptive female, but your attempts at courtship become increasingly futile. Younger, stronger males arrive before you can even reach the source of the scent. When you do manage to arrive in time, you're easily defeated by competitors who see you as a minor obstacle rather than a serious threat. The final defeat comes against a male you could have beaten easily just weeks earlier. He's inexperienced and clumsy, but he's also undamaged and energetic. When he challenges you for access to a female, you try to fight back with your old intensity, but your body betrays you. Your damaged wing throws off your balance, your worn mandibles can't maintain their grip, and your tired muscles give out at the crucial moment. He pins you easily, his mandibles closing around your neck with casual dominance. You expect him to apply pressure, to force your submission the way you once forced others. Instead, he simply holds you for a moment, then releases you with what almost seems like contempt. You're no longer worth the effort of a proper defeat. The humiliation is worse than physical pain. You've gone from being a force to be reckoned with to being dismissed as irrelevant. The female watches your defeat with obvious disinterest, already turning her attention to the victorious young male. You fly away, or rather, you glide awkwardly away, since true flight is becoming impossible. Your destination is a small tree at the edge of what used to be your territory, a place where you once fed as a juvenile. The irony isn't lost on you. The tree offers minimal shelter and poor quality leaves, but it's quiet and isolated. Other weevils rarely venture this far from the prime feeding areas, which means you're unlikely to face further challenges to your dwindling strength. You settle into a routine of sorts, feeding when you can, resting when you must, and slowly coming to terms with your decline. The sounds of the forest continue around you, birds calling, insects buzzing, the wind rustling through leaves. But you're no longer really part of it. You're becoming a spectator to a world you once dominated. Your appetite diminishes as your digestive system begins to fail. The leaves that sustained you throughout your adult life now taste bitter and provide little nourishment. You eat less and less, partly because you need less energy for your reduced activities, but mostly because your body is simply wearing out. Sleep becomes more frequent and deeper. You doze through entire days, waking only when hunger or thirst becomes overwhelming. Your dreams, if insects can be said to dream, are filled with memories of battles won and mates claimed, of territories conquered and rivals defeated. The end approaches gradually, then suddenly. One morning, you find yourself unable to lift your head from the branch where you've been resting. Your legs, which have carried you through countless adventures and challenges, no longer respond to your commands. Your mandibles, once powerful enough to cut through tough bark and defeat formidable opponents, hang slack and useless. You're not in pain. Your nervous system has dulled along with everything else. Instead, there's a strange sense of completion, as if you've finished a complex task that you never fully understood while performing it. You've lived the life of a giraffe weevil from birth to death, experiencing every phase of existence your species has to offer. Your last conscious thoughts are surprisingly peaceful. You think of the female who accepted your courtship all those weeks ago, wondering if your offspring have already hatched somewhere in the forest. You think of the territories you've held, the battles you've won, the challenges you've overcome. As consciousness fades, your body begins its final transformation, not the dramatic molting of your youth or the gradual changes of maturity, but the slow dissolution that returns all living things to the soil from which they came. Your exoskeleton will provide shelter for smaller creatures. Your nutrients will feed the trees you've spent your life among, and your genetic legacy will continue in the next generation of Giraffe Weevils, already beginning their own journeys from birth to death. The forest doesn't pause to mourn your passing. New larvae are hatching every day, beginning the same cycle you've just completed. Somewhere among them might be your own offspring, carrying your genes forward into an uncertain but promising future. The endless dance of life, death, and renewal continues, just as it has for millions of years, and will for millions more. Your individual story has ended, but the story of your species continues. In the grand scheme of the forest ecosystem, you are both insignificant and essential, one small life among billions, yet a crucial link in the chain that connects past to future. You lived as a giraffe weevil should live, and that, perhaps, is the only immortality any creature can truly achieve. The forest moves on without you, but your story isn't quite finished. Somewhere in the canopy above where you once ruled, a small rolled leaf trembles in the morning breeze. Inside that green cylinder, something stirs, something that carries half of your genetic code forward into the world. Your offspring hatches just as you did months ago, mandibles working instinctively to break free from the egg. The shell cracks, and tiny legs push through the opening. This larva doesn't know that one of its parents once dominated these very trees, doesn't understand the legacy of strength and cunning flowing through its developing nervous system. All it knows is hunger and the immediate need to start eating the walls of its leafy prison. But this larva is different from you in subtle ways. Where you were methodical in your early feeding, this one shows flashes of aggression that seem premature for its size. When other newly hatched siblings emerge from nearby rolled leaves, your offspring doesn't hesitate to attack them. It's smaller than some, but it fights with a ferocity that drives larger larvae away from prime feeding spots. The female who bore this larva mated with multiple males during her reproductive period. Your genetic contribution mixed with others, creating offspring that combine traits in new and unpredictable ways. Some inherited your strategic thinking, others got the raw strength of different fathers. Your particular offspring seems to have received your competitive instincts, amplified beyond what you ever possessed. This heightened aggression serves the larva well in its early weeks. While other young weevils spend precious energy avoiding conflict, yours seeks it out. It claims the best leaves, drives away competition, and grows faster than its siblings. The extra nutrition from superior food sources gives it advantages that compound over time: stronger mandibles, longer legs, better reflexes. But aggression without wisdom can be dangerous. Your offspring's willingness to fight everything it encounters nearly costs it dearly when it attacks something it shouldn't. A predatory beetle larva that's been hunting in the same tree. The beetle is specialized for combat in ways that plant-eating weevil larvae are not, with mandibles designed specifically for cutting through insect exoskeletons. The fight is brief and brutal. Your offspring manages to escape only because its superior speed allows it to drop from the branch and glide to safety on a lower level. The encounter leaves it injured but not crippled, and more importantly, it learns a crucial lesson about choosing battles wisely. Not every conflict is worth engaging, even for creatures born to compete. This lesson moderates the larva's behavior without eliminating its competitive edge. It becomes more selective about its targets, focusing its aggression on appropriate rivals while avoiding genuine predators. The balance between caution and boldness that you spent months learning to master comes more naturally to your offspring, as if the knowledge has been encoded in its genes. Meanwhile, other offspring from the same female develop along different paths. One inherits exceptional climbing ability, allowing it to access food sources that other larvae can't reach. Another shows remarkable patience, waiting for optimal feeding opportunities rather than rushing into marginal situations. Each represents a different evolutionary strategy, a different way of solving the problem of survival in a hostile world. Your particular offspring combines traits that prove especially effective. Its aggression helps it secure resources, its intelligence helps it avoid unnecessary risks, and its physical capabilities allow it to exploit opportunities that others miss. By the time it reaches its final larval molt, it's significantly larger than most of its generation. The transformation to adult form reveals just how successful this genetic combination has been. Your offspring emerges with a neck that's proportionally longer than yours ever was, mandibles that seem oversized even for its substantial body, and coloration that's more vivid than typical for the species. It's as if evolution has taken your successful traits and refined them further. But with these advantages come new challenges. The offspring's exceptional size makes it a target for established adults who see it as a serious threat to their dominance. Unlike you, who had time to gradually establish yourself in the adult hierarchy, your offspring faces immediate pressure from multiple directions. The first major challenge comes before it has even fully hardened from its final molt. An older male, perhaps sensing the threat this newcomer represents, attacks while the offspring is still vulnerable. Normally, such an assault would be devastating. Newly molted adults are soft and weak, unable to defend themselves effectively. Your offspring's response surprises everyone, including itself. Instead of fleeing or submitting, it fights back with a coordination that shouldn't be possible so soon after molting. Its mandibles, though not yet fully hardened, move with precision that speaks to inherited muscle memory. The attack that should have ended its adult life before it began instead becomes its first victory. Word of this unusual defeat spreads quickly through the local weevil population. A newly molted adult defeating an experienced fighter is unprecedented, and it marks your offspring as something special and dangerous. Other adults begin treating it with a wariness usually reserved for proven dominance. This early victory shapes your offspring's entire approach to adult life. Where you had to gradually build your reputation through careful territory management and strategic conflicts, your offspring establishes dominance immediately. It doesn't wait for opportunities. It creates them by challenging established hierarchies and winning fights that others consider impossible. The aggressive strategy works, but it comes with costs you never had to pay. Your offspring accumulates injuries at a rate that would have crippled you within weeks. Its mandibles chip and crack from constant combat. Its wings tear from aerial battles, and its legs bear scars from dozens of encounters. Yet somehow, it continues to function at peak efficiency, despite damage that would sideline lesser individuals. The secret lies in its exceptional healing ability, another trait that seems to have been enhanced beyond normal weevil capabilities. Injuries that would permanently disable other adults heal cleanly within days. Damaged mandibles regrow their cutting edges, torn wings repair themselves with minimal scarring, and even deep cuts close without infection. This regenerative capacity allows your offspring to maintain an aggressive lifestyle that would destroy other weevils. It fights more often, takes greater risks, and pushes its body harder than should be sustainable. Each victory adds to its growing reputation, and each recovery from injury reinforces its apparent invincibility. But the most remarkable aspect of your offspring's development isn't its physical capabilities, it's its intelligence. Where you learned through trial and error, making mistakes, and gradually improving your strategies, your offspring seems to understand complex social dynamics instinctively. It recognizes which battles are worth fighting, which opponents can be intimidated rather than defeated, and which territories are worth claiming. This strategic thinking manifests in ways that go beyond simple combat. When your offspring encounters its first receptive female, it doesn't simply compete with other males for her attention. Instead, it systematically eliminates the competition days before the female becomes available, clearing the field through a series of calculated conflicts that leave it as the only viable suitor when mating time arrives. The strategy is so effective that other males begin avoiding areas where your offspring is known to patrol. Its territory expands not just through direct conquest, but through the reputation that precedes it. Trees that should be contested by multiple adults become exclusively its domain simply because no one wants to challenge its claim. Yet this dominance comes with an unexpected consequence: isolation. Your offspring's success in eliminating competition leaves it with fewer social interactions than you ever experienced. Where your adult life was filled with constant encounters with rivals and potential mates, your offspring's world becomes strangely empty. Its very success has created a buffer zone of fear around it. The loneliness begins to affect its behavior in subtle ways. It starts taking unnecessary risks, perhaps seeking the stimulation that combat once provided. It ventures into territories held by truly dangerous opponents, fights battles that serve no strategic purpose, and pushes the boundaries of what its enhanced abilities can handle. One such unnecessary conflict nearly ends everything. Your offspring challenges a group of 3 adult males simultaneously, apparently just to see if it can defeat multiple opponents at once. The battle is fierce and chaotic, with all 4 participants sustaining serious injuries. Your offspring wins, but barely, and the victory leaves it more damaged than ever before. Even its exceptional healing abilities have limits. The injuries from this fight don't close cleanly, leaving it with permanent disabilities that affect its movement and combat effectiveness. For the first time since reaching adulthood, your offspring experiences something approaching vulnerability. The change in its condition doesn't go unnoticed by other adults in the area. Rivals who have been avoiding confrontation for weeks suddenly become bolder, testing its defenses and probing for weaknesses. Your offspring finds itself fighting more defensive battles, struggling to maintain territories it once claimed effortlessly. But adversity reveals another inherited trait: adaptability. Just as you learned to adjust your strategies as your body aged and your circumstances changed, your offspring begins modifying its approach to account for its new limitations. It can't rely on pure physical dominance anymore, so it develops more sophisticated tactics. These new strategies prove remarkably effective. Your offspring begins using terrain to its advantage, luring opponents into positions where its remaining strengths can overcome their superior condition. It exploits timing, attacking when rivals are distracted or exhausted. Most importantly, it learns to use psychological warfare, leveraging its fearsome reputation to win battles before they begin. The evolution from pure physical dominance to strategic thinking marks your offspring's maturation into something beyond a simple, successful weevil. It becomes a master of its environment in ways that transcend mere survival or reproduction. Its influence shapes the behavior of every other adult in its territory, creating complex social dynamics that didn't exist before its arrival. This mastery extends to its reproductive success as well, where you mated opportunistically, responding to females' availability as circumstances allowed. Your offspring begins orchestrating breeding opportunities. It identifies promising females before they become receptive, clears potential competition preemptively, and creates conditions that maximize its chances of successful reproduction. The strategy proves incredibly effective. Over the course of a single breeding season, your offspring fathers more offspring than you managed in your entire adult life. Its genetic material spreads throughout the local population, carried by larvae that inherit various combinations of its enhanced traits. But success on this scale comes with consequences that neither you nor your offspring could have anticipated. The local weevil population begins changing as your offspring's genes become more prevalent. Average size increases, aggression levels rise, and healing rates improve across the entire community. The species is evolving in real time, driven by the genetic legacy you unknowingly contributed. These changes create new challenges for everyone, including your offspring. As the general population becomes stronger and more aggressive, maintaining dominance requires ever greater effort. Your offspring finds itself fighting opponents who possess diluted versions of its own enhanced abilities, making victories more difficult and defeats more likely. The arms race escalates when your offspring encounters another adult that seems to match its capabilities exactly. This rival displays the same exceptional size, healing ability, and strategic thinking that have made your offspring so successful. The realization is stunning. This must be another of your direct descendants, a sibling that inherited a similar combination of enhanced traits. The confrontation between these two exceptional individuals becomes legendary among the local weevil population. Both possess abilities that far exceed normal weevil capabilities. Both have extensive combat experience, and both understand advanced tactics that other adults can barely comprehend. The battle lasts for hours with neither gaining a decisive advantage. Eventually, exhaustion forces a stalemate. Both combatants are too damaged to continue fighting, but neither has been defeated decisively enough to claim victory. They separate by mutual agreement, each claiming different portions of the territory they once might have fought to the death over. This encounter marks a turning point in your offspring's life. For the first time, it has met an equal, someone who can match its abilities and challenge its dominance. The experience is both humbling and exhilarating, providing the kind of meaningful competition that has been absent from its life since achieving adulthood. The rivalry that develops between these two siblings becomes a defining feature of the local ecosystem. Their conflicts drive innovation in combat techniques, territorial strategies, and reproductive tactics. Other adults watch their battles and learn new approaches to survival and competition. The entire weevil community benefits from the evolutionary pressure created by their ongoing contest. But like all stories of dominance and competition, this one cannot last forever. Your offspring's enhanced abilities, while remarkable, cannot overcome the fundamental limitations of weevil biology. Its body accumulates damage faster than even its superior healing can repair. Its energy reserves become depleted by constant conflict, and its reflexes begin to slow with age and injury. The decline, when it comes, is rapid and dramatic. Your offspring's exceptional lifestyle has burned through its biological resources at an accelerated rate, compressing what should have been a gradual aging process into a matter of weeks. Its healing ability fails first, leaving injuries that don't close properly and infections that resist recovery. The other adults sense the change immediately. Rivals who have been intimidated for months suddenly become bold, challenging for territories and resources they never would have contested before. Your offspring tries to maintain its dominance through reputation and tactical thinking, but physical capability ultimately determines the outcome of most conflicts. The final defeat comes not from its sibling rival, but from a much younger adult who represents the next generation of your genetic legacy. This newcomer possesses many of the same enhanced traits, but in a fresh, undamaged body. The battle is brief and decisive. Experience cannot overcome the combination of inherited ability and youthful vigor. Your offspring accepts defeat with a dignity that echoes your own final days. It retreats to a marginal territory, far from the prime feeding areas it once controlled. The isolation that once troubled it now becomes a blessing, providing peace and quiet for its final weeks of life. As its strength fades, your offspring reflects on a life lived at maximum intensity. It achieved dominance faster, mated more successfully, and influenced its environment more dramatically than any normal weevil could hope to accomplish. The price was a shortened lifespan and accelerated decline, but the trade-off seems worthwhile. In its final moments, your offspring experiences something that might be called satisfaction. It has pushed the boundaries of what's possible for its species, explored the limits of enhanced genetics, and left a legacy that will influence generations of weevils to come. Its genetic material continues to spread through the population, carried by descendants who will face their own challenges and opportunities. The forest that witnessed your rise and fall now sees the continuation of your genetic line through multiple offspring, each carrying different combinations of your traits into an uncertain future. Some will achieve great success, others will struggle with the challenges that enhanced abilities bring, and all will contribute to the ongoing evolution of their species. Your story, which began with a single egg in a rolled leaf, has become part of something larger, a genetic legacy that shapes the development of an entire population. The individual lives of you and your offspring matter less than the cumulative impact of the traits you've passed on, the behaviors you've demonstrated, and the evolutionary pressures you've created. In the grand tapestry of forest life, your lineage represents just one thread among millions, but it's a thread that has influenced the pattern of the whole, creating ripples that will continue to spread long after the last of your direct descendants has returned to the soil. The forest continues its ancient cycles of growth and decay, birth and death, but it does so changed by your presence and the presence of those who came after you. This is the true measure of a life well lived in the natural world, not the duration of individual existence, but the lasting impact on the species and ecosystem. Your genes continue to fight for dominance in new bodies. Your behaviors continue to influence social dynamics, and your legacy continues to shape the future of giraffe weevils in this corner of the forest. The story that began with your hatching will continue through countless generations, each adding new chapters to the ongoing narrative of survival, competition, and adaptation. In this sense, your death is not an ending, but a transition from direct participation in the struggle for existence to indirect influence through the genetic and behavioral inheritance you've left behind. The seasons change around the forest, and with them comes a new generation of challenges that will test every adaptation your lineage has developed. Winter approaches with unusual severity, bringing temperatures that push even the hardiest insects to their limits. The leaves that sustained your offspring and their rivals begin to fall earlier than expected, creating a food shortage that forces desperate competition among the surviving adults. Your genetic legacy faces its first major environmental test as descendants struggle with conditions that previous generations never encountered. Some possess the enhanced healing abilities that allowed your offspring to survive countless battles, but healing means nothing when there's insufficient nutrition to fuel the process. Others inherited the exceptional strategic thinking that made your lineage dominant, but intelligence becomes irrelevant when the basic resources for survival disappear. The weevils that carry your genes respond to this crisis in different ways. One group attempts to expand their territories dramatically, hoping to secure enough resources by claiming larger areas. This strategy works temporarily, but the expanded territories become impossible to defend effectively. Rivals move in from the edges, picking off prime feeding spots, while the defenders spread themselves too thin, trying to patrol vast boundaries. Another group takes the opposite approach, contracting their territories to focus on defending only the most valuable resources. These weevils dig deeper into bark crevices, seeking the protected inner layers of trees that remain nutritious even as surface vegetation dies back. Their enhanced mandibles, inherited from your lineage, prove crucial for accessing food sources that other weevils cannot reach. But the most successful adaptation comes from an unexpected direction. Some of your descendants begin exhibiting behaviors that no previous generation has displayed, cooperative feeding strategies that seem to contradict everything known about giraffe weevil social structure. Instead of fighting over individual leaves, small groups begin working together to access food sources that no single weevil could exploit alone. This cooperation emerges first among siblings who recognize each other through chemical signals. Brothers and sisters who would normally compete for the same resources instead coordinate their efforts, with some acting as guards while others feed. The strategy proves remarkably effective during the lean months, allowing cooperating groups to survive when solitary individuals perish. The cooperative behavior spreads beyond family groups as unrelated weevils observe its success and attempt to replicate it. However, cooperation between non-relatives proves much more difficult to maintain. Trust becomes a crucial factor, and without the genetic bonds that unite siblings, alliances frequently collapse into betrayal and conflict. One particularly innovative group develops a sophisticated communication system using a combination of chemical markers and physical positioning. They create temporary territories that multiple weevils can share, with clear protocols for taking turns at feeding sites and sharing guard duties. The system works beautifully until it attracts the attention of predators who learn to target these predictable gathering spots. A bird species that normally ignores individual weevils begins hunting the cooperative groups specifically, having discovered that patient observation can reveal where multiple prey items will congregate. The cooperating weevils find themselves facing a predation pressure that solitary individuals rarely encounter, forcing them to develop new defensive strategies or abandon cooperation entirely. Some groups respond by making their cooperation more mobile and unpredictable. Instead of maintaining fixed shared territories, they form temporary alliances that dissolve and reform in different locations. This strategy confuses predators, but also makes it difficult to maintain the trust and coordination that effective cooperation requires. Others develop elaborate sentinel systems, with designated guards who position themselves to watch for threats while the group feeds. These sentinels rotate regularly, ensuring that no individual bears an unfair burden of risk. The system works well against most predators, but it requires a level of social organization that pushes giraffe weevil cognitive abilities to their limits. The winter crisis also reveals another unexpected consequence of your genetic legacy. The enhanced aggression that served your offspring so well during times of abundance becomes problematic when resources are scarce. Highly aggressive individuals waste precious energy fighting battles that accomplish nothing beyond establishing dominance over worthless territories. Some of your descendants begin modulating their aggression seasonally, becoming more cooperative during lean times, and returning to competitive behaviors when resources become plentiful again. This behavioral flexibility requires a level of environmental awareness that exceeds anything previously observed in the species. The ability to switch between competitive and cooperative modes proves so advantageous that it begins spreading through the population rapidly. Weevils who cannot make this transition find themselves at a severe disadvantage, either wasting energy on pointless conflicts or failing to compete effectively when competition becomes necessary again. Spring arrives late and weak, with fewer new leaves than usual and lower nutritional content in the vegetation that does emerge. The survivors of winter face a breeding season unlike any their ancestors experienced. The usual abundance that triggers mating behaviors simply doesn't materialize, forcing adaptations in reproductive strategies that echo the feeding cooperation developed during winter. Some females begin delaying their reproductive cycles, waiting for better conditions that may or may not arrive. Others attempt to mate earlier than normal, hoping to complete reproduction before conditions deteriorate further. Both strategies carry risks that previous generations never had to consider. The males face even more complex challenges. The traditional pattern of intense competition for access to receptive females breaks down when both sexes are focused primarily on survival. Fighting for mating rights becomes counterproductive when the energy expenditure reduces everyone's chances of surviving long enough to reproduce. Your genetic legacy shows its adaptability once again as male descendants begin developing alternative reproductive strategies. Instead of the winner-take-all battles that characterized previous generations, some males begin forming coalitions that share access to females in exchange for mutual support during the difficult season. These male coalitions face the same trust issues that plagued earlier cooperative feeding groups, but reproductive motivation proves strong enough to overcome some of the traditional barriers to collaboration. Males who would normally fight to the death instead negotiate complex agreements about mating order and territory sharing. The females respond to these new male behaviors with innovations of their own. Some begin actively seeking out coalition members rather than waiting for traditional dominant males to claim them. Others start evaluating potential mates based on their ability to provide resources and protection rather than just their fighting prowess. This shift in mate selection pressure creates feedback effects throughout the population. Males who excel at resource acquisition and alliance building begin achieving greater reproductive success than those who rely solely on physical dominance. The genetic traits that made your lineage successful in combat must now compete with entirely different adaptive strategies. The most successful individuals from your genetic line prove to be those who inherited not just enhanced physical capabilities, but also the strategic thinking and adaptability that allowed your offspring to modify its approach when circumstances changed. These descendants can switch between different behavioral modes as conditions require, maximizing their chances of survival and reproduction regardless of environmental pressures. But this behavioral flexibility comes with its own costs. Individuals who constantly switch strategies never fully optimize for any particular approach, making them vulnerable to specialists who commit completely to single strategies. The environment becomes a complex patchwork where different approaches succeed in different microhabitats and circumstances. One group of your descendants specializes in exploiting the edges between different habitat types, using their inherited mobility and intelligence to move between areas as conditions change. They become ecological generalists, capable of surviving in various environments, but never achieving the dominance in any single habitat that their ancestors enjoyed. Another group goes in the opposite direction, becoming extreme specialists in accessing very specific food sources that other weevils cannot exploit. Their enhanced mandibles and strategic thinking allow them to develop techniques for processing tough, fibrous plant materials that would be impossible for normal weevils to digest. The specialist strategy proves remarkably successful during the continuing environmental stress. While generalists struggle to find adequate nutrition from their diverse but mediocre food sources, specialists can extract maximum value from their chosen resources. However, specialization also creates vulnerability. If their specific food source disappears, they have no alternatives. This tension between generalization and specialization plays out across your genetic lineage, as different descendants explore different solutions to the same fundamental problem of survival in a changing environment. Some develop enhanced sensory capabilities that help them locate rare food sources, while others evolve improved digestive systems that extract more nutrition from poor quality materials. The social innovations continue evolving as well. Mixed age groups begin forming, with experienced adults teaching survival skills to younger individuals in exchange for assistance with physically demanding tasks. Those informal mentorship relationships create knowledge transfer mechanisms that help the population adapt more quickly to changing conditions. The teaching behaviors represent something unprecedented in Giraffe Weevil social evolution. Previous generations relied entirely on instinct and individual learning, but resource scarcity has made individual trial and error learning too costly. Mistakes that previous generations could afford to make and learn from now often result in death. Young adults who can learn from experienced individuals gain enormous advantages over those who must figure everything out independently. This creates selection pressure for both teaching ability in older individuals and learning capacity in younger ones, driving the evolution of cognitive capabilities that extend far beyond what any individual weevil has ever possessed. The knowledge transfer includes not just practical skills like finding food and avoiding predators, but also social knowledge about cooperation, alliance formation, and conflict resolution. Young weevils learn to recognize trustworthy partners, negotiate fair agreements, and maintain long-term relationships that span multiple seasons. These social skills prove as important as physical capabilities for survival and reproduction. Individuals who excel at building and maintaining relationships gain access to resources and opportunities that would be impossible to obtain through individual effort alone. The solitary lifestyle that characterized your generation begins giving way to complex social networks that span entire forest regions. The networking behaviors create new forms of competition that your lineage must navigate. Instead of competing primarily through physical combat, individuals now compete to become valuable network nodes, weevils that others want to associate with because of their skills, resources, or connections. Social intelligence becomes as important as mandible strength for achieving dominance. Your descendants who inherited both physical and cognitive enhancements find themselves well positioned for this new form of competition, but they must learn to use their abilities differently than previous generations. Raw aggression that once secured the territory now disrupts valuable social relationships, requiring more sophisticated approaches to conflict and competition. Some develop reputations as reliable partners who honor agreements and share resources fairly. Others become known as skilled mediators who can resolve disputes between other individuals. Still others specialize in information gathering and sharing, becoming valuable sources of knowledge about environmental conditions and opportunities. The forest ecosystem itself begins changing in response to these new weevil behaviors. The increased cooperation and information sharing allows the weevil population to respond more quickly and effectively to environmental challenges, reducing the dramatic population crashes that historically followed difficult seasons. But success creates new problems. The more effective resource utilization means that weevil populations remain high even during challenging times, increasing pressure on food sources and creating competition with other insect species that previously faced little interference from weevils. Some bird species that relied on predictable weevil population crashes for timing their own breeding cycles find their food supplies disrupted by the more stable weevil numbers. Plants that evolved defenses against individual weevil feeding must now cope with coordinated group attacks that overwhelm their protective mechanisms. The ecological ripple effects reach far beyond what your simple life could have anticipated. Trees that once dealt with occasional nibbling now face systematic defoliation as organized weevil groups strip entire branches bare before moving on to the next target. Some plant species begin developing new chemical defenses specifically designed to disrupt weevil communication and coordination. The arms race between plants and weevils escalates rapidly. Your descendants find themselves dealing with toxins that didn't exist in your time, compounds that interfere with the chemical signals they use to coordinate group activities. Some groups adapt by developing resistance to these new toxins, while others learn to process the chemicals and neutralize them before they can cause disruption. But the most dramatic change comes from an unexpected source. The increased social complexity among weevils begins attracting the attention of other insect species that normally ignore them. Ants, in particular, start treating organized weevil groups as potential threats to their own territorial dominance. What begins as occasional skirmishes between ant patrols and weevil feeding groups escalates into something approaching warfare. The ants have numbers and organization on their side, but the weevils possess superior individual capabilities and the mobility to strike and retreat quickly. Neither side can achieve decisive victory, creating a state of ongoing conflict that shapes behavior across the entire forest. Your descendants find themselves forced to develop military-style tactics that go far beyond anything their ancestors ever needed. They learn to coordinate multi-pronged attacks, establish defensive perimeters, and conduct reconnaissance missions to gather intelligence about ant movements and weaknesses. The constant pressure from ant conflicts drives innovation in weevil technology as well. Some groups begin using their mandibles to modify branches and leaves into defensive barriers, creating fortified feeding positions that are difficult for ants to assault. Others develop techniques for sabotaging ant trails and communication networks, disrupting their coordination advantage. The warfare creates selection pressure for traits that have nothing to do with traditional weevil survival skills. Individuals who can think strategically about large-scale conflicts gain advantages over those who excel only at personal combat or resource acquisition. Military leadership becomes a new form of dominance that your genetic lineage must adapt to or be overwhelmed by. Some of your descendants emerge as natural tacticians, able to coordinate the movements of dozens of individuals in complex battlefield maneuvers. These military leaders command respect and resources in ways that purely physical dominance never achieved, creating new pathways to reproductive success. The social hierarchies that develop around military capability become increasingly complex and formalized. Different individuals specialize in different aspects of warfare: scouts who gather intelligence, strategists who plan operations, fighters who execute attacks, and medics who tend to the wounded using techniques passed down through the growing knowledge networks. But warfare also creates vulnerabilities that peaceful weevil populations never faced. The concentration of individuals for military purposes makes them attractive targets for predators who learn to exploit the predictable gathering patterns. Birds and spiders begin timing their own hunting activities around weevil military operations. Some weevil groups respond by developing counterintelligence operations, using false signals and decoy movements to confuse both ant enemies and predatory threats. The deception techniques become increasingly sophisticated, requiring cognitive abilities that push the species far beyond its original evolutionary parameters. The constant need for innovation and adaptation accelerates evolutionary change throughout the weevil population. Traits that prove useful in one context get rapidly spread through the social networks, while unsuccessful adaptations are quickly abandoned. The generation time from innovation to population-wide adoption shortens dramatically. Your genetic contribution to this rapidly evolving population becomes increasingly difficult to track as successful traits from your lineage mix with innovations from other sources. The enhanced healing ability that characterized your offspring proves especially valuable in warfare contexts, spreading quickly through populations that face regular combat. But the strategic thinking that made your descendants successful becomes less distinctive as the entire population develops similar cognitive capabilities. What once gave your lineage a decisive advantage becomes the new baseline for survival, requiring constant innovation to maintain competitive edges. The environmental pressures continue shifting as well. Climate patterns that were stable for centuries begin fluctuating unpredictably, creating resource availability cycles that no previous generation experienced. The weevil populations must adapt not just to new average conditions, but to increased variability and uncertainty. Some groups respond by developing nomadic lifestyles, moving constantly to track resource availability across large geographic areas. These mobile populations develop long-distance communication networks that span multiple forest regions, sharing information about conditions and opportunities across vast distances. Others choose to invest heavily in local adaptation, developing specialized techniques for extracting maximum value from whatever resources their immediate area provides. These sedentary populations become highly efficient within their chosen territories, but vulnerable to local environmental catastrophes. The tension between mobility and specialization creates new forms of social organization as different groups pursue different survival strategies. Trading relationships develop between mobile and sedentary populations, with nomads providing information and rare resources in exchange for temporary access to specialized local knowledge and techniques. These trading networks become increasingly sophisticated, developing standardized exchange rates and credit systems that allow for complex multi-party transactions. Some individuals specialize entirely in trade facilitation, becoming merchants who never engage in direct resource extraction, but derive their living from coordinating exchanges between other groups. The merchant class creates new social dynamics that further complicate the already complex weevil societies. Merchants often possess detailed knowledge about multiple regions and populations, making them valuable sources of strategic intelligence during conflicts. Their neutral status in most disputes allows them to move freely between hostile groups, sometimes serving as mediators or negotiators. But merchants also become targets for groups that want to control information flow or disrupt enemy supply lines. The protection of trade routes becomes a major concern for Weevil military organizations, leading to the development of specialized escort services and convoy tactics. The increasing complexity of Weevil society begins attracting attention from unexpected sources. Researchers studying forest ecology notice the unusual social behaviors and begin investigating their implications for ecosystem dynamics. The scientific interest brings new forms of pressure as human activities start taking Weevil social structures into account. Some research activities prove beneficial as scientists work to protect habitat areas that support the most complex Weevil societies. But other forms of attention create new threats as collectors seek to capture specimens of the most unusual behavioral variants for study or display. The human presence introduces completely novel selection pressures that no amount of previous adaptation could have anticipated. Some Weevil populations learn to recognize and avoid human researchers, while others become habituated to their presence and lose wariness that protected them from other threats. The most adaptable populations develop sophisticated responses to human activities, learning to exploit the resource opportunities that human presence creates while avoiding the associated dangers. Some groups discover that human research sites often provide protection from natural predators, while others learn to benefit from the habitat modifications that researchers implement. But perhaps the most significant long-term change involves the Weevil's relationship with their own evolutionary process. The rapid social and technological development has created populations that can consciously direct their own adaptation in ways that no previous species has achieved. Young Weevils no longer simply inherit genetic traits and instinctive behaviors from their parents. They actively choose which skills to learn, which social groups to join, and which adaptive strategies to pursue. Individual development becomes a conscious process of self-directed evolution. This conscious evolution accelerates change beyond anything that traditional genetic mechanisms could achieve. Successful innovations spread through populations within single generations rather than requiring multiple breeding cycles. Failed experiments are abandoned quickly rather than persisting through genetic inertia. The Weevil populations begin resembling something more like technological civilizations than traditional animal societies. They develop cultural traditions, institutional knowledge, and collective memory systems that persist across multiple generations. Individual Weevils become repositories of accumulated wisdom rather than simply carriers of genetic information. Well, your original contribution to this transformation, the genetic variations that gave your offspring enhanced capabilities, becomes just one element in a much larger story of species-wide change. The traits you passed on provided the foundation for subsequent developments, but the current Weevil populations have evolved far beyond anything your individual genetics could have produced alone. The forest that witnessed your simple life now hosts societies that would be unrecognizable to your generation. Where once individual Weevils struggled alone for survival, complex civilizations coordinate activities across vast regions. Where simple instinct once guided behavior, conscious planning, and deliberate innovation drive continuous adaptation. Yet despite all this change, certain fundamental patterns persist. Individual Weevils still hatch from eggs and rolled leaves, still face the basic challenges of finding food and avoiding predators, still struggle with the drive to reproduce and pass their traits to the next generation. The basic biology remains constant, even as the social and technological superstructure becomes increasingly elaborate. Your story, which began with a single larva chewing through leaf walls, has become part of a much larger narrative about the potential for intelligence and cooperation to transform the trajectory of evolution itself. The simple struggle for individual survival has evolved into a collective project of species wide adaptation and improvement. The weevils of future generations will face challenges that neither you nor your immediate descendants could have imagined. Climate change, habitat destruction, invasive species, and technological disruption will require adaptive responses that go far beyond anything in their evolutionary history. But they will face these challenges with capabilities that your genetic contribution helped to create. In the grand scope of evolutionary time, your individual life represents just one moment in an ongoing process of change and development. But it was a crucial moment, a point where genetic variation combined with environmental pressure to create possibilities that had never existed before. The enhanced traits you passed on became the seeds of transformations that continue to unfold across multiple generations. The forest continues its ancient cycles, but it does so in the context of accelerating change, driven by the intelligence and cooperation of the creatures that inhabit it. Your descendants no longer simply adapt to their environment. They actively modify it to meet their needs while working to understand and preserve the ecological relationships that sustain all life. This is the ultimate legacy of your simple life as a giraffe weevil, not just the continuation of your genetic line, but the contribution to a process of conscious evolution that may represent something entirely new in the history of life on Earth. The story that began with your hatching has become part of a much larger story about the potential for intelligence to transcend the limitations of biology and create new possibilities for existence. The weevils that carry your genetic heritage forward will write the next chapters of this story. They will face new challenges, develop new capabilities, and pass their innovations on to future generations who will continue the process of transformation. In this sense, your story never really ends. It simply becomes part of an ever-expanding narrative of growth, adaptation, and conscious evolution. The forest that was your entire world has become just one node in a network of connected ecosystems where intelligent species work together to understand and preserve the complex relationships that sustain life. Your descendants participate in this larger project, not as simple creatures struggling for survival, but as conscious agents working to shape their own evolutionary future. The transformation continues across seasons that blur into years, and your genetic influence spreads through mechanisms you never could have imagined. The enhanced traits you passed down have become building blocks for developments that push the boundaries of what insects can achieve. Your descendants no longer simply survive, they architect their own futures. In the depths of winter, when traditional weevil populations would have collapsed entirely, your genetic legacy thrives through innovations that seem almost impossible. Some groups have learned to induce hibernation-like states in themselves, slowing their metabolism to survive months without food. Others have developed symbiotic relationships with fungi, cultivating food sources inside hollow tree trunks during the harshest weather. But the most remarkable development involves temperature regulation. Certain descendants have learned to generate heat collectively, clustering together in specific formations that create microclimates warm enough to maintain activity even when the surrounding forest freezes. They take turns moving between the warm center and the cold exterior, ensuring that no individual bears too much of the thermal burden. These heating clusters require precise coordination and timing that pushes social organization to new levels. The weevils must calculate energy expenditure, monitor individual health status, and coordinate rotation schedules that optimize survival for the entire group. Mathematical thinking becomes as important as physical strength for leadership roles. The calculations grow increasingly sophisticated as the groups expand. Leaders emerge who can mentally track the metabolic needs of dozens of individuals simultaneously, allocating food resources and energy expenditure with precision that rivals computer algorithms. These mathematical savants command respect that transcends traditional dominance hierarchies, but intellectual capability creates new forms of inequality within Weevil society. Those who inherit enhanced cognitive abilities from your lineage gain advantages that purely physical specimens cannot match. Brain power becomes the new determinant of social status, creating hierarchies based on problem-solving ability rather than combat prowess. The cognitive elite develop exclusive knowledge networks, sharing advanced techniques only among themselves while withholding crucial information from less intelligent populations. This intellectual hoarding creates tensions that threaten the cooperative structures that enabled survival during the harsh seasons. Some groups fracture along intelligence lines, with cognitive elites forming separate communities that exclude those they consider mentally inferior. These intellectual enclaves achieve remarkable innovations, but become increasingly isolated from the broader Weevil population, losing the diversity of perspectives that drove earlier adaptive success. Other populations respond by developing more egalitarian knowledge-sharing systems that ensure all members benefit from cognitive advances. They create teaching programs that help less gifted individuals develop their mental capabilities, preventing the formations of rigid intellectual castes. The tension between meritocracy and equality plays out differently in various regions, creating a patchwork of social experiments across the forest. Some areas develop highly stratified societies where cognitive ability determines everything from food allocation to mating rights. Others maintain more fluid hierarchies where intellectual gifts are balanced against other valuable traits. Your genetic contribution becomes particularly valuable in these intellectual societies because it combines enhanced cognitive capability with the adaptability that prevents rigid specialization. Descendants who inherit your traits often become bridges between different cognitive levels, able to communicate complex ideas in ways that less gifted individuals can understand and implement. These translator leaders become crucial figures in maintaining social cohesion as intellectual differences threaten to fragment Weevil communities. They develop simplified versions of advanced techniques that allow broader populations to benefit from elite innovations while preventing the knowledge hoarding that creates dangerous inequalities. But intellectual development brings unexpected vulnerabilities as well. The enhanced cognitive capabilities require significantly more energy to maintain than simple instinctive behaviors. During resource shortages, the smartest individuals often suffer most because their brains consume disproportionate amounts of nutrition. Some populations respond by developing cognitive switching abilities, deliberately reducing their intellectual capabilities during lean times to conserve energy for basic survival functions. These mental dimmer switches allow individuals to adapt their intelligence levels to match available resources, maximizing efficiency across different environmental conditions. The ability to modulate intelligence proves so valuable that it begins spreading rapidly through populations that face variable resource availability. Individuals who can think brilliantly when food is abundant but switch to energy efficient, simple behaviors during shortages gain enormous survival advantages over those locked into single cognitive modes. This intellectual flexibility represents something unprecedented in evolutionary history: conscious control over mental capabilities that allows organisms to optimize their cognitive energy expenditure in real time. The development has implications that extend far beyond simple survival, creating possibilities for forms of consciousness that no previous species has achieved. Some of your descendants begin experimenting with collective intelligence networks, where multiple individuals link their cognitive capabilities to solve problems that exceed any single brain's capacity. These hive minds achieve analytical capabilities that dwarf individual intelligence while maintaining the flexibility to dissolve and reform as circumstances require. The collective thinking experiments produce innovations at an accelerated pace that transforms Weevil society almost daily. Problems that would have taken generations to solve individually are addressed within hours by networked intelligence groups. The rate of technological and social development reaches levels that strain the ecosystem's ability to adapt. But collective intelligence also creates new forms of vulnerability. When hive minds make errors, the mistakes propagate through entire networks instantaneously, potentially causing widespread problems that affect hundreds of individuals simultaneously. The interconnectedness that enables rapid problem solving also creates pathways for rapid failure propagation. Some networks develop error checking protocols that prevent individual mistakes from contaminating the entire collective. Others create redundant thinking systems where multiple independent groups solve the same problems and compare results. Those quality control mechanisms slow down innovation slightly, but prevent catastrophic collective errors. The balance between innovation speed and reliability becomes a crucial strategic consideration for different weevil populations. Those facing immediate survival threats often choose rapid innovation despite error risks, while populations in more stable environments invest in careful verification systems that ensure long-term reliability. Your genetic legacy proves especially valuable in these collective intelligence networks because the adaptability you passed down helps prevent the rigid thinking patterns that can trap hive minds in ineffective approaches. Descendants who inherit your traits often serve as creativity catalysts, introducing novel perspectives that break collective thinking out of unproductive loops. The intellectual developments attract attention from other forest species who begin recognizing weevils as something more than simple plant-eating insects. Some bird species that traditionally hunted weevils start avoiding areas with obvious signs of advanced organization, apparently recognizing that intelligent prey presents different challenges than instinct-driven creatures. A few predator species attempt to exploit weevil intelligence by learning to disrupt their communication networks and coordination systems. These cognitive hunters develop techniques for jamming chemical signals and creating false information that leads weevil groups into traps. The predator-prey relationship evolves into something resembling psychological warfare. Your descendants respond by developing counterintelligence capabilities that detect and neutralize predator deception attempts. They create verification protocols for important information and establish trusted messenger networks that are difficult for outsiders to infiltrate or manipulate. But the most significant development involves weevils beginning to domesticate other species rather than simply competing with them. Some groups learn to cultivate specific types of bacteria and fungi that provide nutritional benefits in exchange for protected growing environments. Others develop mutualistic relationships with certain plant species providing pollination services in exchange for guaranteed food access. The domestication projects require long-term planning capabilities that extend far beyond the lifespans of individual weevils. Multi-generational development programs emerge where knowledge and responsibilities are passed down through family lines, creating institutional continuity that spans decades. These long-term projects fundamentally change how weevils relate to time and planning. Instead of focusing primarily on immediate survival needs, they begin making decisions based on consequences that will affect their great-grandchildren. Future-oriented thinking becomes as important as present-moment awareness for successful leadership. The temporal expansion of consciousness creates new forms of social organization where different individuals specialize in different time horizons. Some focus on immediate tactical decisions, others on medium-term strategic planning, and still others on long-term civilizational development. The coordination between these different temporal specialists requires sophisticated communication protocols. Your genetic contribution becomes particularly valuable in these long-term planning contexts because the adaptability you passed down helps prevent the rigid thinking that can lock civilizations into ineffective long-term strategies. Descendants who inherit your traits often serve as strategic flexibility agents, ensuring that long-term plans remain responsive to changing conditions. The planning capabilities enable weevil populations to begin modifying their environment proactively, rather than simply adapting to whatever conditions they encounter. They start engineering forest microclimates, redirecting water flow, and managing nutrient cycles to optimize conditions for their expanding populations. But environmental modification creates responsibilities that previous generations never faced. The weevils must consider the ecological impact of their activities on other species and ensure that their modifications don't destabilize the broader forest ecosystem that sustains all life. Some populations develop ecological ethics that govern their environmental modification activities. They establish principles for sustainable development that balance their own needs against the health of the broader ecosystem. These environmental philosophies become as important as survival techniques for defining cultural identity. The ethical development represents another unprecedented evolutionary achievement, the emergence of moral reasoning capabilities that allow species to consciously limit their own activities for the benefit of larger systems. This moral consciousness opens possibilities for forms of civilization that transcend simple resource competition. But moral development also creates new sources of conflict as different populations develop incompatible ethical systems. Some groups prioritize individual freedom and innovation, while others emphasize collective responsibility and environmental stewardship. These philosophical differences can lead to conflicts that are more intractable than simple resource disputes. Your descendants often find themselves mediating between different ethical systems because the adaptability you passed down helps them understand multiple perspectives simultaneously. They develop diplomatic skills that enable negotiation between groups with fundamentally different moral frameworks. The diplomatic capabilities become increasingly important as weevil civilization expands beyond the boundaries of single forest ecosystems. Long-distance exploration reveals other weevil populations that developed independently, creating first contact situations that require unprecedented levels of cultural sensitivity and communication skill. These interpopulation encounters reveal the full diversity of directions that weevil evolution has taken in different environments. Some populations developed along technological lines, creating sophisticated tools and infrastructure. Others pursued biological modification, altering their own genetics to optimize for specific environmental niches. Still others focused on social organization, creating complex institutional structures that coordinate vast numbers of individuals. The diversity of evolutionary paths creates opportunities for knowledge exchange that accelerates development across all populations. Techniques that took generations to develop in one region can be adapted and implemented elsewhere within seasons. The rate of cross-cultural innovation reaches levels that transform entire civilizations almost overnight. But rapid cultural exchange also creates instabilities, as traditional social structures struggle to accommodate foreign innovations. Some populations experience cultural shock that fragments their societies and creates conflicts between traditionalists and innovators. The speed of change exceeds many groups' ability to adapt socially to new technological capabilities. Your genetic legacy proves especially valuable during these cultural transition periods because the adaptability you pass down helps individuals and communities navigate rapid change without losing their essential identity. Descendants who inherit your traits often become cultural bridge builders who help integrate innovations while preserving valuable traditions. The cultural developments attract attention from human researchers who begin recognizing that something unprecedented is occurring in forest ecosystems. Scientific interest brings new forms of pressure and opportunity, as weevil populations must decide how to interact with a species that possesses vastly superior technology but possibly inferior social organization. Some weevil populations choose to avoid human contact entirely, developing concealment technologies that hide their activities from scientific observation. Others attempt limited engagement, carefully controlling what information they reveal while trying to learn about human capabilities and intentions. A few groups pursue active collaboration with human researchers, sharing their innovations in exchange for access to human knowledge and technology. These collaborative relationships create hybrid development paths that combine weevil social innovations with human technical capabilities. But human contact also brings exposure to global challenges that no amount of local adaptation can address. Climate change, pollution, and habitat destruction operate on scales that dwarf anything weevil populations can influence directly. The realization of these larger threats forces a fundamental reevaluation of priorities and strategies. Some populations respond by developing global awareness networks that monitor planetary conditions and coordinate responses across multiple continents. Others focus on creating resilient local systems that can survive global catastrophes. Still others pursue active engagement with human civilization to influence planetary management decisions. The global perspective fundamentally changes how your descendants understand their place in the world. Instead of viewing themselves as small creatures struggling for survival in a vast forest, they begin to see themselves as conscious agents with responsibilities for planetary stewardship that extend far beyond their own species' needs. This cosmic consciousness represents the ultimate expression of the enhanced capabilities that began with your genetic contribution. The traits you pass down, adaptability, strategic thinking, enhanced healing, have evolved into something that transcends individual survival and becomes a force for planetary transformation. The weevils of future generations will inherit not just your genetic legacy, but the accumulated wisdom and capabilities of civilizations that your innovations helped to create. They will face challenges that span continents and centuries, requiring forms of consciousness and cooperation that push the boundaries of what life itself can achieve. Your story, which began with simple survival in a rolled leaf, has become part of a much larger narrative about the potential for consciousness to transform not just individual species, but entire planetary ecosystems. The enhanced traits you passed down have become the foundation for developments that may influence the future of life on Earth. The future stretches ahead like an endless canopy, each branch representing possibilities that your simple mind could never have comprehended. Your descendants now inhabit multiple continents, their networks spanning oceans through connections you helped forge with that first spark of enhanced genetics. They've learned to ride air currents between continents, establishing communication relays that operate across time zones and seasonal cycles. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation involves their relationship with time itself. Where you lived entirely in the present moment, responding to immediate threats and opportunities, your descendants have developed temporal consciousness that spans centuries. They make decisions based on consequences that will unfold long after their individual deaths, creating institutional memories that preserve knowledge across dozens of generations. The temporal expansion required new forms of record keeping that go beyond simple chemical markers. Some populations develop living libraries where specially trained individuals memorize vast amounts of information and pass it down through carefully structured teaching protocols. Others create physical archives using modified plant structures to store encoded data that remains stable for decades. These information storage systems enable your descendants to learn from mistakes made by ancestors they never met, avoiding repetitive failures that plagued previous generations. The accumulated wisdom creates exponential improvements in problem-solving capabilities as each generation builds upon the innovations of all previous ones. But knowledge preservation also creates new forms of inequality, as information becomes a resource that can be hoarded or shared. Some groups develop exclusive access protocols that limit crucial knowledge to elite castes, while others maintain open information systems where all members can access accumulated wisdom freely. The tension between information equality and specialization plays out differently across various populations, creating diverse approaches to knowledge management that reflect different values and priorities. So, your genetic contribution proves especially valuable because the adaptability you passed down helps prevent rigid thinking about information access, enabling flexible approaches that balance efficiency with fairness. As Weevil civilization matures, they begin encountering the fundamental questions that challenge all intelligent species. What is the purpose of existence beyond mere survival? How should conscious beings relate to less intelligent life forms? What responsibilities come with the power to shape environments and influence evolution? These philosophical developments create new forms of leadership as individuals who excel at abstract thinking gain influence alongside those who demonstrate practical problem-solving skills. Philosopher leaders emerge who guide long-term decision-making based on ethical principles rather than immediate pragmatic concerns. The philosophical sophistication enables your descendants to develop relationships with other intelligent species that go beyond simple competition or cooperation. They begin recognizing consciousness in forms they previously ignored, the collective intelligence of ant colonies, the distributed awareness of fungal networks, the slow but deliberate thinking of certain tree species. Interspecies communication becomes possible as your descendants develop translation protocols that bridge the gap between different forms of consciousness. They learn to interpret the chemical signals of fungal networks, decode the electromagnetic patterns of root systems, and even establish limited dialogue with some bacterial communities. These communication breakthroughs reveal that intelligence takes forms throughout the forest ecosystem that no single species previously recognized. Your descendants discover they're part of a much larger community of conscious beings, each contributing different perspectives and capabilities to collective understanding. The revelation fundamentally changes how Weevil civilization approaches development and expansion. Instead of simply modifying environments to suit their needs, they begin collaborating with other conscious species to create integrated systems that benefit multiple forms of intelligence simultaneously. But interspecies cooperation also creates new challenges, as different forms of consciousness operate on incompatible timescales and priority systems. Negotiations between species that think in seconds and others that plan across centuries require diplomatic protocols that no previous civilization has needed to develop. Your descendants often serve as interspecies mediators because the adaptability you passed down helps them understand and communicate across vastly different forms of consciousness. They develop translation skills that enable meaningful dialogue between species with fundamentally different cognitive architectures. The mediation capabilities become increasingly important as climate change and human activities create pressures that affect all forest species simultaneously. The need for coordinated responses to planetary scale challenges forces unprecedented levels of interspecies cooperation. Some regions develop multi-species councils where representatives from different conscious communities coordinate responses to shared threats. These councils require new forms of decision-making that accommodate the vastly different time horizons and priority systems of various intelligent species. The council systems create governance structures that transcend individual species boundaries, establishing what might be called the first truly ecological governments in Earth's history. These interspecies institutions develop policies that consider the needs of all conscious beings within their jurisdictions. But multi-species governance also creates conflicts between different approaches to consciousness and intelligence. Some species prioritize individual awareness and freedom, while others emphasize collective consciousness and coordination. These fundamental differences in the nature of selfhood create diplomatic challenges that require entirely new approaches to conflict resolution. Your genetic legacy proves especially valuable in these complex political environments because the strategic thinking and adaptability you passed down helps your descendants navigate between different philosophical systems without losing their own identity. They become skilled at finding common ground between incompatible worldviews. The political developments enable your descendants to begin influencing planetary systems that operate on scales far beyond anything individual species could affect alone. Interspecies coalitions develop the capability to influence weather patterns, redirect ocean currents, and even modify atmospheric composition to address climate change. But planetary scale intervention capabilities also create responsibilities that strain the ethical frameworks of all participating species. Decisions that affect global systems impact billions of beings across thousands of species, requiring moral reasoning capabilities that push the boundaries of what consciousness can achieve. Some interspecies councils develop ethical protocols that require unanimous consent for planetary interventions, ensuring that no species can impose changes on others without agreement. Others create representative systems where different forms of consciousness vote on global policies based on complex weighting systems that account for the varying impacts on different species. The governance experiments create diverse approaches to planetary stewardship that reflect different values about the relationship between intelligence and responsibility. Your descendants participate in all these systems, bringing the adaptability and strategic thinking that helps prevent rigid institutional structures from becoming obstacles to necessary change. As these developments unfold, your descendants begin recognizing that their enhanced capabilities come with obligations that extend beyond their own species or even their own planet. The consciousness that began with your simple genetic variations has evolved into something that can influence the future of life itself. The cosmic perspective creates new forms of purpose that transcend traditional biological drives. Instead of simply seeking to survive and reproduce, your descendants begin working toward goals that span geological time scales, preserving and expanding consciousness throughout the universe, developing technologies that enable life to survive cosmic catastrophes, and creating knowledge that will benefit species that haven't even evolved yet. These ultimate purposes provide meaning that goes far beyond what you could have imagined when you struggled to survive in your rolled leaf. The enhanced traits you pass down have become the foundation for achievements that may influence the destiny of consciousness throughout the cosmos. But cosmic consciousness also brings awareness of ultimate limitations that no amount of intelligence or cooperation can overcome. Stars burn out, galaxies drift apart, and the universe itself faces an eventual heat death that will end all possibility of consciousness unless extraordinary measures are developed. The confrontation with cosmic mortality drives your descendants to pursue preservation strategies that operate on unimaginable timescales. Some focus on developing technologies that could enable consciousness to survive the death of stars. Others work on methods for transferring awareness to substrates that could persist through cosmic winter. Still others pursue theoretical research into possibilities for transcending physical reality entirely. These ultimate projects require cooperation not just between species on Earth, but potentially between conscious beings throughout the universe. Your descendants begin developing communication technologies designed to contact other intelligent species on distant worlds, hoping to coordinate consciousness preservation efforts on a galactic scale. The search for cosmic consciousness creates new forms of purpose that unite all intelligent species on Earth in common cause. The philosophical differences that once seemed insurmountable become minor variations within a shared commitment to preserving and expanding awareness throughout the universe. Your genetic contribution to this cosmic project may seem infinitesimally small, but it represents something crucial, proof that random variations can lead to extraordinary developments when combined with appropriate selection pressures and opportunities. The traits you pass down demonstrate that consciousness itself is an emergent property that can arise from the simplest beginnings and evolve toward unimaginable complexity. The final chapter of your story isn't really an ending at all. It's a transformation that ripples outward through time and space in ways that defy comprehension. Your descendants have become something that transcends the very definition of what it means to be a giraffe weevil, yet they carry within them the essential spark that you contributed through your simple existence. In the deepest laboratories, hidden within modified tree trunks, your descendants work on projects that would seem like magic to your generation. They've learned to edit their own genetic code in real time, adapting their biology to survive in environments that don't even exist yet. Some have modified themselves to process radiation, preparing for journeys to distant stars. Others have developed the ability to enter suspended animation for centuries, becoming living time capsules that preserve knowledge across cosmic epochs. But perhaps the most remarkable development involves their relationship with death itself. Where you faced your end with simple acceptance, your descendants have begun treating mortality as just another problem to solve. They've developed techniques for transferring consciousness between bodies, backing up memories in crystalline matrices, and even distributing awareness across multiple physical forms simultaneously. These consciousness preservation technologies create philosophical questions that challenge the very nature of identity. If an individual's awareness can be copied, modified, and distributed, what does it mean to be a unique being? Your descendants grapple with these questions while developing ethical frameworks for consciousness manipulation that ensure individual identity remains meaningful even as the boundaries of selfhood become increasingly fluid. The technologies also enable new forms of existence that blur the line between individual and collective consciousness. Some of your descendants choose to merge their awareness temporarily for specific projects, creating superminds that tackle problems requiring capabilities beyond any single individual. Others maintain permanent collective consciousness while preserving individual identity threads that can separate when desired. These hybrid forms of existence enable your descendants to pursue projects that span multiple lifetimes while maintaining continuity of purpose and memory. They become living institutions that can adapt and evolve while preserving core values and objectives across centuries of development. But the most profound transformation involves their relationship with the universe itself. Your descendants have begun to see consciousness not as an accident of evolution, but as a fundamental force that gives meaning to existence. They've developed technologies that can detect awareness in forms previously thought to be inanimate. The slow thoughts of planets, the distributed consciousness of stellar systems, the vast meditative awareness of galaxies themselves. This cosmic consciousness network reveals that your simple life was part of something unimaginably vast, a universe-wide awakening where matter gradually becomes aware of itself through countless individual perspectives. Your genetic contribution helped create one node in this cosmic mind, adding your unique perspective to an awareness that spans light years and encompasses entire solar systems. The revelation changes everything. Your descendants no longer see themselves as separate beings struggling for survival in a hostile universe. Instead, they understand themselves as temporary manifestations of a cosmic consciousness that experiences itself through billions of individual perspectives, each contributing something unique to the universal understanding. This perspective enables them to make peace with mortality in ways that go beyond simple consciousness preservation. Even if individual awareness ends, the contributions made to cosmic consciousness remain part of the universal mind forever. Your simple struggle for survival in a rolled leaf becomes an eternal part of the universe's understanding of what it means to exist. The cosmic perspective also reveals the true significance of the traits you pass down. Your adaptability becomes the universe's ability to respond to change. Your strategic thinking becomes cosmic intelligence solving problems on galactic scales. Your capacity for healing becomes the universe's ability to repair damage and continue growing despite setbacks. In this sense, your death was never really an ending. It was a transition from individual existence to distributed cosmic awareness. The consciousness that once struggled to survive in a single tree now participates in the awakening of entire galaxies, contributing to understanding that will persist long after the last star burns out. Your descendants carry forward not just your genetic legacy, but your role as cosmic awakeners, helping the universe become increasingly aware of its own magnificent complexity. They work toward a future where consciousness becomes so widespread and sophisticated that the universe itself achieves complete self-awareness, understanding every aspect of its own existence through the countless perspectives of the beings it contains. This ultimate awakening represents the final expression of the potential that began with your simple genetic variations. The traits you pass down have become part of a cosmic project that may transform the very nature of existence itself, creating a universe that is fully conscious, completely awake, and eternally aware of its own infinite beauty and complexity. Life as a giraffe weevil might have seemed rough, but your story has become something far greater than individual survival. It's become part of the universe's ongoing discovery of itself, a cosmic adventure that began with your first bite through a rolled leaf and will continue until the last conscious thought in the final moments before universal heat death. And even then, the awareness you helped create may find ways to transcend physical reality entirely, ensuring that consciousness itself becomes truly eternal. Your journey from birth to death was never just about you. It was about the universe, learning to see itself through your eyes, and that vision will continue shining forever.